Section 137D. Section 137D. That is the section that Tinubu or APC or any of their lawyers don't want to hear right now, because it's their albatross. They don't want to hear it. But it's the section that is music to my ears, the music to the ears of obedience, music to the ears of patriotic Nigerians out there, music that gives hope that indeed the mandate of the people will be retrieved from the APC and given back to the Labour Party, to Peter Obi, so that the new Nigeria that we know and believe is possible will become real. Section 137D. APC doesn't want to hear it. Tinubu doesn't want to hear it. Neither do their lawyers. But we must hear it. They no one hear them, but they must hear them. What does Section 137 really say? We'll read it word for word. It's written in plain English. So if you read, you will understand it. If you are like, if you have attended school, you have attended even only primary school, you don't even have any secondary school experience, don't worry. So far as you can read and write, you will understand what Section 137 subsection D says about who is qualified to be president of Nigeria. It's talking about disqualifications. In fact, Section 137 has 10 subsections. 10 criteria that defines who is qualified to be president of Nigeria. Unfortunately, the APC tries to hide behind subsection E. We'll read about that subsection. But what finishes them, what puts the final nail on the coffin for them, is subsection D. So we'll start with subsection D, and then we'll read subsection E, and then we'll interpret it as laymen, so that there'll be no confusion. No confusion. Now, Chapter 6, Part 1, Section 137 of the Constitution of Nigeria, which handles disqualification, reads, and I say, a person shall not be qualified for election to the office of president if, it mentions A, it takes a citizenship of another country, B, he has been elected to the office of president for 2 terms before, C, he is adjudged to be a lunatic or declared to be of unsound mind. In fact, this subsection C makes it compulsory for any person who is running for president to be checked. Yes, for mental health. Yeah, but we'll come to that another day. D, which is the part that interests me. Remember, a person shall not be qualified for election to the office of president if D, he is under a sentence of death imposed by any competent court of law or tribunal in Nigeria, or a sentence of imprisonment or fine for any offense involving dishonesty or fraud by whatever name called, or for any offense imposed on him by any court or tribunal, or substituted by any competent authority for any other sentence imposed on him by such a court or tribunal. Section 137, subsection 1D. That's the part they don't want to hear. I just read it now. That section 137, subsection 1D has 2 components. The first component is if he is under a sentence of death imposed on him by any competent court of law or tribunal in Nigeria, that's one. Or if he is under a sentence of imprisonment or fine for any offense involving dishonesty or fraud by whatever name called, or for any offense imposed on him by any court or tribunal, or substituted by a competent authority for any sentence, any other sentence imposed on him by such a court or tribunal. You see the two components of section 137 subsection 1D. Two parts. A sentence of death, which must be imposed by a court in Nigeria, or a sentence of fine or imprisonment, which can be imposed by any competent court in any part of the world. By that second part of subsection 1D of section 137, it simply means that you cannot commit robbery and be convicted of robbery in America and then come to Nigeria and say you want to become president. You cannot be convicted of rape in United Arab Emirates and then come to Nigeria and say you want to be president. You cannot be convicted of stealing in the United Kingdom and then you come to Nigeria and say you want to be president. That is what the second part of that subsection 1D of section 137 says. So the argument that Tinubu and his lawyers are making, that the fine, the sentence of fine that was imposed on Tinubu in America does not apply in Nigeria, is false. Because it will only be correct if it had been a sentence of death that was imposed on Tinubu. Then you would have said, oh, that sentence of death was imposed in America, so it does not apply in Nigeria. But that is not the sentence that is of interest to Nigerians. And to this case, the sentence that is of interest is the sentence of fine. And from the second part of subsection 1D of section 137 of the Constitution of Nigeria that I just read, the second part says that if the person has come under a sentence of imprisonment or a sentence of fine for any offense involving dishonesty or fraud, by whatever name called, or for any other offense imposed on him by any court or tribunal, or substituted by a competent authority for any other sentence imposed on him by such a court or tribunal. Any court, underline. Any court. Now we have a court in America that sentenced Tinubu to a fine of $460,000 US, which he forfeited. For what? Is it for Gary? Is it for Ewa? No. He did not forfeit it for Gary. He did not forfeit it for Ewa. He did not forfeit it for cassava. What did he forfeit it for? He forfeited it because that money was represented proceeds of narcotics trafficking. That money represented proceeds of narcotics trafficking. That was why he forfeited that $460,000 US. Now, Tinubu lawyer says he surrendered it. He did not surrender it all. The court ordered that the money be forfeited. And why was it forfeited? Because the court had given a previous order for the money to be frozen, for the accounts to be frozen, for the money to be seized. Why was the money seized before? Why did the court issue a seizure order to freeze those accounts belonging to Tinubu? Because the monies were being withdrawn and being used to buy land in order to cover the tracks for these drug cartels and their members. So it was not that he voluntarily surrendered. No. The money was first of all seized. This investigation took well over 6 years. And after 6 years, the investigating officer, Kevin Moss, swore an affidavit and detailed the findings of his investigation. And then filed a complaint of forfeiture and slammed 2 charges against Bola Tinubu. Charge 1 was 18 U.S. Code 1956, which bordered on money laundering, and 18 U.S. Code 1957, which bordered on making money through illegal means. And after being slammed with those 2 charges, when they discovered the hanky-panky of monies being withdrawn and all that, they had to apply for the accounts to be frozen, for the money to be seized. So when the case was dispensed of by way of plea bargain, when Tinubu's brother came to beg, because Tinubu was in Nigeria at the time, and he used his brother Kola Tinubu and his mother Magaji something, and those ones were claiming that some of the monies were theirs. But the case was proven, and then the judge ruled based on the punishment that is prescribed by the law that was broken. You know, he was slammed with 2 charges. Each charge has its prescribed punishment by law. 18 U.S. Code 1956, the prescribed punishment is sentence or fine of not more than 500,000 US dollars, or sentence of imprisonment of not more than 20 years, or both. Not more than 500,000 US dollars means that it could be 460,000 US dollars. It could be 300,000 US dollars. It could be 200,000 US dollars. It could be 490,000 US dollars. It could be exactly 500,000 US dollars, but not more than 500,000 US dollars. And the person with the prerogative to decide the exact amount of fine is the judge. And the judge ruled by the court order, the final forfeiture order, ruled that 460,000 US dollars must be forfeited because the money was already in government account, and anything in excess of it will be released. Because a judge can only give punishment that is prescribed for the offense. The judge could not have said, oh, even though we have found you guilty, let's seize all the money in the account. No, that's not what the law said. The law says that the fine for being involved in money laundering and being in possession of money that is proceeds of drugs trafficking, the punishment shall be a fine of not more than 500,000 US dollars. Now, they say that it was not Tinubu that was charged. It was his account. Now, listen. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, without conceding, that truly it was the account that was sued and not Tinubu. The charge was for what? Was for money laundering. For money laundering to happen, somebody must put money into the account and somebody must take money out of the account. Yes? So, will the account launder money by itself? Somebody has to use the account to launder money. And only the person in whose name the account was opened or who has access to the account, if it's a corporate account, can use the account to launder money. So when they say, come to court and show reason why we should not seize the whole money, was it the account that developed 2 legs and went to court? Is it not the representative, the lawyers for Tinubu that went to court? So, there was a sentence of fine of 460,000 US dollars on Tinubu, because he's the owner of the account, is the one that was guilty of using that account for money laundering activities for and receiving proceeds of drugs trafficking. So you cannot separate Tinubu from it, like the court did not separate him. And the sentence was a punishment, because that was the punishment prescribed for violating that code, violating that law, a sentence of fine. So having been sentenced to a fine in US for something worse than just dishonesty, for something worse than just fraud, this is a crime engaging in drugs trafficking. Having been sentenced to a fine of 460,000 US dollars for the crime of being in possession of monies that are proceeds of drug trafficking, heroin trafficking. Applying that to the second part of subsection 1D of section 137 of the Nigerian Constitution. Magana Yaka Rifa. Otisorai. Case has solved itself. Otanare no. Chikena. Finished. Guilty as charged. Disqualifications. Tinubu is not qualified. It is simple and clear as day. Tinubu is not qualified. End of discussion. Now, the next item is that they were talking about the U.S. consulate. The U.S. consulate. That the U.S. consulate cleared Tinubu. That is another line. We'll deal with that in another video so that the video does not get too long. These videos get long very quickly. I don't know why. But please, I hope you are still watching. Before you leave, share this video. Let's create awareness. People need to know. People need to know. Nigerians need to know. Because knowledge is power. We have wandered in ignorance for so long. That is why we have found ourselves in a position where we celebrate criminals. Criminals who use the future of our Alimajiri children. They steal it and they use it to fuel their cars. According to Chukwumeriji, that powerful poem. We celebrate criminals because we don't know. Hit that subscribe button and share this video. Even if you don't subscribe, I don't care. But share so that people will hear. Share it so that others will hear it. That indeed, Tinubu is not qualified to be president of Nigeria. Having been found guilty. He was convicted. You know, some people have argued that he was not convicted. What is conviction? We did a separate full video for that. Conviction is the verdict reached by a court after investigation. From the final order of forfeiture, the verdict was that the 460,000 US dollars was for proceeds of drugs trafficking. That was the verdict. That's a conviction. And consequently, the court ruled, the judge ruled that the money must be forfeited. That was a fine, a sentence of fine. So there was a conviction, clearly. And we cannot have a convicted person as president of Nigeria. The world is already mocking us. Let's not mock ourselves. Those of you hiding behind religion to support criminality, remember that your religion does not support such criminality. Islam does not support it. Christianity does not support it. Yes. Does Islam support drugs or alcohol or stealing? No. So why would you hide behind Islam to defend criminality? Don't let any cleric mislead you to go against the tenets of Islam to support criminality in the name of, oh, we are supporting him because he's Muslim, or we're supporting him because he's Yoruba. What then would we teach our children when we say that it's bad to do drugs? What then? Which face would you use to face your children? Which face would you use to face the youth and tell them that it's bad to do drugs? When you have somebody who is convicted of drugs trafficking for being in possession of money that is proceeds of drugs trafficking. Somebody who is convicted of that. You are defending that person for office of president? No. Let's do the right thing. Let's set the right precedents for our children, for our country, for ourselves. If you have not shared, please share this video so that others will see it. Share and like. If you are convinced, you can subscribe. The journey does not stop here. We have work to do. This is just the beginning. The next video will look at the U.S. consulate and whether or not they cleared Tinubu. Thank you.